Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 49. Should teachers consider shifting their mindset around behavior? Ooh, this is a hot topic, and I know it's one that really gets people thinking and discussing. It brings up a lot of emotion, and people have really strong opinions about it. So I know it's going to be tough to talk about. And I know it's going to be some of the information is going to be tough to hear. So get ready, take a deep breath, maybe grab some calming tea, and let's get to it.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey, okay, so yes, today is pretty intense. This is a pretty intense conversation because I have had the opportunity, the privilege, I don't know what you want to call it, maybe even the to my detriment, the ability to look at behavior from a multitude of perspectives. As a classroom teacher myself for a long time and dealing with a variety of different behaviors through the years, I will say that I felt like my strength when it came to behavior issues was building rapport with kids. I built relationships with students. Kids loved me. I loved them. They knew it. And it made a huge difference. It made all the difference. So I didn't often have problems that made me want to pull my hair out. That's not to say that I didn't have them, because I definitely did have years that were harder than others. And I had some severe situations, and especially in the very beginning, like my first year of teaching, I had a really hard time with a particular student that made me wonder if I'd even gone into the right profession. So I think that we have those times. And it wasn't just that first year. I had many times later on that I had really difficult kids, and I had to figure out solutions to those problems. Because when I was teaching, it was really frowned upon for you to call in for support, for you to call the office. You had colleagues that you used for like colleague timeouts, and you had people in the school that may have been known for their very authoritative personality, and they didn't take any nonsense. And those were the people that you called when you really needed somebody kind of tough. And so I think that was really helpful back in the days of teaching, which was not that long ago, but in those times it was really helpful. But we did not have people in the schools to support behavior problems. Like, we had the principal. The principal dealt with it, the AP dealt with it, and you dealt with it. And I think, and on some hand, like, yes, there were times it was hard, and sometimes I really just wanted the child out of my classroom, but that we used each other for that. Like, I've sent kids out of the room before, and other teachers have sent kids out of the room before to me, and I was the room where they sent kids, and they would come in, and that's where they had to be. And, for a temporary amount of time. I think those can be really helpful, especially when the teacher really needs a break. I don't know if I think it's the answer to like your extreme behavior problems. I didn't have kids that wanted to leave, so leaving was a consequence. And I, it was upsetting. It was a big deal. And it did work for some people. And it was, they'd have to do it once and they never did it again. And so I definitely feel like that could be helpful. There were times that it was a severe situation and I had to call the office and, give the child a referral. But maybe a handful, and in 17 years of teaching, I think that's, pretty unbelievable. And now we have some people in place, some jobs in place where they're trying to support teachers in this way and support kids, mainly supporting kids in this way of like how to help them through behavior. And we have a variety of styles. And I think that is, sometimes that it's like bashing your head together with somebody else. You have such a different style than they do. They have completely different philosophy than you do. They don't have the perspective that you have, because when you have worked with kids on for behavior, and that's been like one of your sole jobs, or maybe even, your sole job, you start to look at behavior differently. It's no longer the quick fix. Now you've got to figure out how you're going to shape and change the behavior. And once you start learning and reading and researching and dealing with it and trying things out and, hypothesizing and, working from there, you start to find out information that you didn't know as the teacher. And I don't mean the information you find out about their background, which hopefully you are finding that out about their background, because that's building a relationship. And those are the kind of things that you want to know about your students. But you're kind of you're finding out things about behavior and about what works for kids, and not all kids are the same. And even though we have a school system that wants to standardize everything and also claims to differentiate, we're rarely differentiating. And I mean, we really are spending such a little percentage of time differentiating that, and then we wonder why some kids don't get it. It's really mind-boggling sometimes to me. I feel the same way about behavior. We can't say these are the rules, these are the consequences, or these are the expectations, everyone must follow it, that's how it is. I mean, we want kids essentially to be able to think outside of the box, to be able to problem solve and think critically. And conformity isn't how people learn how to do that. And I think that we've got a lot of mentality of like conformity, and we're conformists. And I know that's hard to hear, and I know it's hard to say out loud. But when we it's got to be this way, everyone must do it this way, that is conforming. And that's what we're teaching people. And that's kind of a philosophy that, are you buying into that philosophy yourself as the teacher? And that's something you have to honestly ask yourself, because I'm going to give you an example. So today I had a student that he speaks very little English, and he struggles to communicate with his teacher, and in the classroom he has a hard time. And he because he's in a primarily English speaking classroom. And so he has a difficult time, getting his message across, and he's about 7. And so he's struggled. He's been struggling with this, and he gets frustrated. And he's also like a typical boy in the sense that he likes to like horse around and goof off. And he doesn't seem like he's being aggressive. It may appear sometimes like he's, because he's like, he'll hit people. And I don't mean like softly. I mean, I don't mean like he hits them and punches them. I mean like he's messing around like boys sometimes do. And sometimes I think that we have forgotten that as a school system. Like we forget that that's like a natural way for boys to kind of figure out their world. And I don't mean to generalize, and I'm not trying to like stereotype boys, but I think aggressive behavior is common in people that identify with themselves as male. And there's hormones and societal things that contribute to that. And so I think it's something that we need to know and be aware of. And if you've done a little bit of reading about, this child development and the psychology of the boy brain and things like that, it's interesting. And I think we've forgotten about it because we're always acting like, oh, they're hitting, they're being aggressive, like it's the end of the world. And it isn't. It's a part of being a child. And it's how we're trying to figure out where we fit and what kind of behaviors and things we want to try on. And I think it's important for us to remember those kinds of things. And obviously, I don't think it's okay for us to just allow boys to walk around and punch each other. And that's not what I mean at all. But what I mean is that like acting like that's the end of the world, it's not necessarily the end of the world. It doesn't mean they're going to grow up and be murderers. It means that they're figuring out their world. And where they fit and how they belong. And it's a part of them figuring it out. And I think that we have to kind of understand that sometimes. Now, when it's a serious aggressive offense, then that's totally different. That's something that we can't, and I'm not saying that's okay for us to just let them hit each other. But I think we also, again, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't have to be they're going to the office or getting a referral. Like it doesn't have to be like that. We don't have to have this, black and white society. It's not black and white. There are so many shades of gray. And I think we have to keep that in mind when we're looking at behavior. And so, okay, so I had this boy, so he he messes around with other people. Plus English is not his primary language, so he doesn't understand everything. And sometimes that causes frustration. Think about a toddler when they're learning to speak. When you don't understand them, they get upset. They get mad. Sometimes they have temper tantrums. I think we have to expect that when people are not understanding kids, that they're going to get frustrated. And understandably, nobody likes to not be heard or not understood or treated as if they don't exist because they're not fitting in this exact way we want them to. So I think that that's really important. So this student, he was having difficulty, and someone brought him to me, and I basically comforted him because he was upset, he was crying, and I know that people were not happy with that. They felt like I was rewarding him for misbehaving or rewarding him from running away from his line. And I felt like there was more to it. And I'm building a relationship with this child. In order to help him teach him behavior, he has to feel safe with me. And if he doesn't feel safe with me, or he doesn't feel like he's valued or cared about, it's going to be a lot harder for me to get him to understand that there are some social norms that I want to teach him. And it's going to be the same thing for his teacher. So sometimes when I'm constantly being questioned of like, what am I thinking? That's where I'm like, maybe we need to have a different mindset around behavior, because I'm guilty of it. I was guilty of that as a teacher. Like, I didn't understand why if this person didn't have this consequence or this didn't happen, like why was this not happening? And what are we teaching them? This is right and wrong. And I need to show them what this is like. And it's not that I don't believe in consequences, because I think there are natural consequences, and I think there are positive and negative consequences to our behavior. And I think that it's important for us to learn that. So I don't not think that, but I also think that sometimes we have to take off that everything is black and white hat, because it isn't. And we also have to look at things that we may not see necessarily right away. And once we find out some things, like we find out that, for instance, that let's say that this particular child, he gets it's almost like, if you've ever heard of, I think it's called barn sour or stable sour. It's when a horse gets close to the barn, they completely take off and go running towards the barn, and they're like out of control. And I've been on a horse that did this, and it was terrifying. And I was holding on for dear life. They ran under a tree, branches were in my face. I was like halfway hanging on to the horse, so it was racing towards the barn, and I was like, oh my goodness, it was so scary. I could have been trampled and thrown off and all kinds of other things. It was really a really scary thing. I kind of feel like that for this kid. Like, he gets close to his own brother who's in a younger grade, and as soon as he gets anywhere in his vicinity, he almost is like barn sour. He freaks out, and he wants to get to his brother. And so observing him very unbiasedly, because he's not impacting the rest of the kids in front of me. He's not stopping my instruction. He's not doing anything disrespectful or rude to me. I don't have any of those factors. I just have the opportunity to have a relationship with him. And so I don't have all the other things against me. So I have a different perspective. And my perspective is I watch this child, and I see that he behaves this way when he gets close to his brother. And at the end of the day today, that happened again. And he's trying to get away from his teacher, who's holding on to him, and he's flailing around, and he's hitting her, and he's not hitting her in an aggressive way to hurt her. He's trying to get away from her. He's trying to get to something. He was so determined. He had such a determined look. And sometimes maybe that's hard for people to see, because they're so focused on the behavior. They're not focused on why the behavior is occurring. I watched all of this unfold, and he, when he got to his brother, he held on to him, kissed him, hugged him, held him close, held him tight. And I started to hypothesize. I thought, what if this child has been in this situation before? where he's been separated from his brother? What if he's been told to stay in line somewhere or get onto a bus somewhere and he's been separated from his brother? Because this is recreating that scenario for him, and after school going onto the buses. As soon as he was with his brother, he was totally fine. He was perfectly fine. So I think, oh my goodness, did he have like some kind of traumatic event? Is he legally in our country? Has he experienced something that he cannot explain? And I wonder this. And I think, these are the kinds of events that happen to children that traumatize them. And I think that that's the perspective change that I'm talking about. We can't understand what that could possibly feel like. I can only imagine the horror that it would exist for me if I was ripped away from my children. It's hard to imagine it. It's too upsetting to even think about. And I have like a lot of empathy. So I think for me, it is an easier thing to imagine. So, but I don't think everybody feels the feelings of others. And when you don't feel the feelings of others, it's hard for you to understand how painful that can be. But when you do feel the feelings of others, you do understand how painful that is. And so you begin to think about what it would be like from their perspective. And so I think, we've got kids that are in horrific situations. They're facing, massive, massive trauma. They've experienced things that we can only imagine, that we only watch on TV or hear in a scary movie. And it's upsetting. And so we've got all these factors, and we've got like the pressure that we are putting them under in schools, the testing and the expectations and the standards and the rigor and all that, all those things that we're doing. And we have to see that this is impacting children's behavior. And we have to have some kind of understanding. Maybe we need to look at this from a different perspective. Maybe we need to kind of see how they feel and figure out the whys behind the behavior, and not always that we must teach them that there is a rule that they stay in line until they are called for the bus. I understand there's a rule. I understand that we have to teach children expectations, and I get that. But we also have to understand where they're coming from. And maybe it's not all black and white. Maybe we differentiate the rule for that particular family. We allow them to sit together. We eliminate the behavior. We eliminate the children being scared. And we've made an accommodation for kids. Why can we not ever think of it like that? It's just really hard for me to see such a black and white mentality and such a conformity mentality. It's difficult for me. I'm a fan of the Divergent books. Like I read them all. I've seen the movies. I really liked that. I have a sociology background. So for me, any kind of sociological, like the Hunger Games and things like that, it's very interesting to me. And so, when I was watching Divergent, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the category I probably would have fallen in, because I don't fall in other categories. I feel often like I'm alone in the world sometimes in my thinking. And I'm like, that's okay with me. It's all right with me. It's okay that I feel differently. And it's hard. It is hard. It's hard right now to feel so differently about this, and to have, people feel or interpret like things that I believe or feel, like interpreted as being a lack of support or a lack of like caring about what teachers are going through. And the sad part of it is that I have like always been a fighter for teachers. And I felt like it was really important. And I was a fighter for kids. And what I'm noticing is that the reasons that kids misbehave, like the 5 main reasons, and it's power, control, attention, avoidance, belonging. Like if those are the 5 main reasons that kids misbehave, I also think about the teacher. And I think what a teacher's feeling right now, the pressure that teachers are under, the black and white expectations that teachers face, they don't have any power. You don't have any power. You don't have any control. You're not getting the attention that you need. You may be avoiding things that you have to do that you don't believe in. You don't even get to make a decision sometimes about how you are structuring your day or how you're going to teach a lesson. And you may not feel like you belong. I know I don't feel like I belong right now. I feel like an outcast, an outsider coming into a school. I don't feel a sense of power over my day or control over my schedule, or I don't feel like I get a lot of attention, and I definitely feel like I want to avoid some tasks that make me miserable, like physically restraining children. Like that sounds awful, feels awful to me, and I don't feel like I belong. So is some of my behavior impacting children? So are some of your behavior impacting kids? Like if you're experiencing those 5 factors, could your mentality be skewing or tainting or creating some type of a bias against some of the kids that have behavior issues in your classroom? It's a hard question, and it probably has a very complicated answer. And if you're thinking, nope, that's not me. I'm fine. Everything's great. I just think they need to follow rules. Then I want you to really dig in, and I want you to really think about that. Because is it always about following the rules? Or is it about doing what's best for kids, teaching them right from wrong, understanding where they're coming from, showing empathy, giving grace, practicing patience, practicing gratitude? Where do those things come in? It's really complicated. It's a complicated story, and I get that. I know how hard it is to be in the classroom, and you've got that one person that's disrupting 18 other kids, and you have to be on the pacing guide, and you know that you have an assessment the next day, or maybe it's that day, or maybe they're having a meltdown during your assessment, and that's your evaluation, and that's your evaluation is based on the data. And I get all those things, but all those things are us having a lack of power and control, and feeling like we belong. And so are we doing that to kids? Are we showing enough empathy? So sometimes we're going to have to change our perspective. We're going to have to look at it in a different way. And the bottom line is that when I was in the classroom, when I was teaching, I got very little to zero training on behavior management. I think we did a book study on the first days of school by Harry and Rosemary Wong, and we did a book study on tools for teaching, which I highly recommend. I'll link to them in the show notes. They're excellent. I know I've talked about them before. They were excellent, but that's it. And we were a Kagan school, which I'll also link to, and it was, the expectation was high engagement, which I also think is an excellent proactive strategy for behaviors. Like when you've got kids engaged, you have a lot less behavior issues. I mean, you sometimes can get none. You will have none. And I think that matters. I mean, building communities and culture in your classroom, room transformations and like exciting events and making things a game, like all of those things, like that changes the culture in your classroom. It changes the atmosphere for those kids that are struggling emotionally, mentally, behaviorally, academically. It changes it. And maybe that's the change they need to straighten up in the area of behavior. So, but we had very little training, like I said, as teachers, and we didn't have any training on emotional and social and emotional aspects, and we didn't have any training on, we started getting a little bit of training on mindfulness like towards the end of me teaching. And I know that there's some more going on now, but not a lot, because a lot of the times we're focused on data or, standards or the test or whatever. So we don't have a lot of time or PD on real issues, like how to deal with trauma, it looks different. Dealing with a child who's experienced trauma looks different. Their brain is not capable of completely understanding this is the rule, this is the consequence. They're not going to process it in the same way. We have to make accommodations. We have to make modifications. We have to differentiate. If we have kids with, emotional, mental health issues, it's going to look different for them. We can teach them that this is the expectation. We can teach them that these are our rules, but it takes so much more than it does for just the average child. And we have to understand that. And I really think it's time for us to have a shift in our mindset, because if we're going to stick to this black and white mentality, we're going to continue to have more and more and more behavior issues, and we're not going to know what to do with them. And our first response is going to be, get them out of my classroom, get them out of my classroom, get them out of my classroom. And I understand that too. Like, why are these kids in school? Well, guess what? They're in school. And we are part of the problem. We have to be part of the solution. It's vital that we are part of the solution. We can avoid tragedies if we're part of the solution. And so I think it's time for a mindset shift. Okay. I know that was heavy. It was really intense, and a lot of different, opinions and perspectives and so forth have gone into this. So I want to hear from you. Like, have you thought maybe I'm thinking about this a little bit too black and white, or I think you're crazy? Me, not you. Like, you think I'm crazy, or no, that's just not going to work for me. This is how it is, and this is how it has to be, and there should be a consequence. And like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? And how's it working for you? That's the next question. How's it working for you? Well, I'm currently working on a behavior workshop. I'm starting to think it might be a behavior course, because there's just so much information on dealing, like proactive strategies, and then dealing with, behavior issues themselves, and things that we can do for kids to help reshape their behavior and change the mentality. There's also like mindset issues and things to talk about. I wouldn't say issues, but shifts in mindset. There's, what do we do when a child's in a crisis? What do we do after the child has returned from after they've had a crisis? And so there's just so much to discuss. And I think most people would say that they probably would want to know how do you deal with the issue? And they would skip right past the proactive strategies, which that is unfortunate, because the proactive strategies will prevent things from actually happening in the classroom. So there's a lot to share. So I'm still trying to decide exactly how I want that all to break down, but those are the areas that I'm focusing on. So if you have some thoughts on that, share them with me. I'd love to hear them. Message me on Facebook, Trina Debery Teaching and Learning. Email me, tdebery@trinadeberyteachingandlearning.com. Just let me know what you're thinking. Go ahead and give the show, rate it and leave a review. I'd love to hear from you. Even if we don't have the exact same way of thinking, that's okay. We can think differently. I'm open to hearing what you have to say. I hope that you're open to hearing to what I have to say. All right. This one tired teacher is ready for a long weekend. I hope you are making sure that you're taking care of yourself too, because it's really important. Because you've got to feel like you have some power and control, and you have to have that special attention, and you have to feel like you belong. So I hope that you find your people, you find your rest, you find your recharging, so that you can be ready for those kids. Until next time, sweet dreams and sleep tight.